Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rachel Bridge, Chair of the Pipeline Industries Guild, and I'm joined today by Caroline Christensen from Wellbeing of Women. Today's webinar will be live, so please can you turn your microphones off just in case we pick up any background noise. And if you've got any questions, please pop them into the chat function. I'll keep an eye on the chat function as we progress through this session, and I can raise any questions that you have. We can also do a bit of a Q&A session at the end. Probably worthwhile just giving you a bit of a sort of trigger warning. We will be talking about things that affect people and things like infertility and endometriosis and other challenges. So please bear that in mind. And if you want to have your camera off, then that's absolutely fine, or listen at a later point, that's no problem too. So I'm just going to explain a little bit about why I chose Wellbeing of Women as the charity for our annual dinner this year, and then Caroline's going to give us a really good intro to the charity and what they do. So let me just see if I can change slides. Hang on a second. Ooh. There we go. So why did I choose Wellbeing of Women? So endometriosis is a condition that affects 1 in 10 women in the world and the UK, and I personally have been affected by this. Unfortunately, it took 7 years for my condition to be diagnosed, and that caused lots of challenges for me personally, but also at work as well. Once that was diagnosed, I had 4 operations, which were varied in their levels of success. But effectively, endometriosis is not a condition that can be cured. It's something that you have to live with. But sadly for me, it affected my ability to conceive and therefore my fertility. I was also later diagnosed almost 11 or 12 years after my symptoms started with adenomyosis, which is similar to endometriosis, but it has similar challenges in terms of the impact it can have on your day-to-day life. But it's really hard to diagnose adenomyosis and endometriosis. But yeah, that also contributed to my challenges around fertility. So infertility and fertility treatment affects 1 in 6 people globally, and I think it's a really challenging process to go through, and something that lots of people have experience of, and everybody's experience is unique and different, and that's probably one of the biggest challenges with infertility, is that no one sort of symptom or route works for everybody. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about infertility, the impact it has, and what we can do about it to help try and improve the chances. For me, though, the reason I chose Wellbeing of Women is because, you know, essentially they are there to research and make sure we have solutions to these challenges. And there's ways of treating the symptoms of these conditions, but actually if you can treat the cause, then that will prevent you from having to go through these other phases. And that was, you know, specific to my experience. So infertility in the UK, 3.5 million people are affected. I think that's about 1 in 6 couples. So a huge volume of people are affected for lots of different reasons. Mine were very specific to endometriosis and adenomyosis, but lots of people are impacted for different reasons. 58% are aged 25 or above and are typically employed. So most people that are going through fertility treatment are in the world of work and inside organisations. I'm really lucky that Fisher German has a fertility policy and a very supportive HR team. My line manager was very supportive to support me through those processes, but I appreciate not everybody has that. I thought it was really important just to share the stats on how successful fertility is. It came as a massive shock to me and my partner when we started this process. The percentage chance of getting pregnant through a fertility process is not really as high as you might expect. So depending on your age category, that does have a big impact. But I, at the time, fitted in that top bracket, the 18 to 34 area. So we had statistically around just under a 35% chance in a successful process. We went through 4 rounds of IVF, and it wasn't until the final round that we, were fortunate enough to have a child. But for me, it was just a massive shock. I had no idea that that was the statistics, and I thought IVF was a process that you go through when you get a successful outcome when we started, and it was very much a huge learning curve for lots of different reasons. So this is why I chose to support Wellbeing of Women. And the future looks so much brighter as a result of the work they do. So hopefully the research that they are doing and supporting will stop people having to go through some of the processes I had to go through, and pick up on some of the challenges earlier on, so that we can all benefit from this research and the amazing things that they do. There we go. And then I'm going to transfer across to Caroline, and she can present on what Wellbeing of Women does and why you exist.
Hi everyone, I hope you're going to be able to see this. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yeah, we can see that. Thanks, Caroline.
Hi, I'm Caroline, as Rachel said, from Wellbeing of Women. I actually head up their philanthropy department, but we're a small team of about 16 of us, and Wellbeing of Women has been going for 60 years. You can see our 60 logo there. And I will take you through a bit about sort of what we do, and Rachel pointed out some of the sort of key statistics around some of the issues that are affecting women. So Wellbeing of Women is a women's health charity. We're the only health charity in the UK that looks at women's health across, we sort of refer to it as across the life course, from fertility and pregnancy and babies. The research that we fund tends to cover babies in sort of up to about sort of 6 months to a year, so newborn premature babies, and then with sort of adolescent girls with periods, and then gynecological cancers, and then things like menopause as well. So we talk with women, we get women together to talk about what the issues are and what needs to be done. So some other sort of statistics around women's health, and Rachel highlighted the importance of research. Only 2.1% of publicly funded research is dedicated to women's reproductive health, including pregnancy and childbirth, which just seems mad because, all women are the people that give birth, and everyone is born, and there is not enough research into these issues. 1 in 10 women have endometriosis, as Rachel said, but also PCOS. And I think endometriosis is becoming something that people have sort of heard of a bit more, but adenomyosis, I only found out what that was about 2 years ago, and it's 1 in 5 people have that. So there's just not enough awareness about these really quite common issues. Things like gynecological cancers. Some of the gynecological cancers are the rarer cancers, but 21 women a day will die in this country from a gynecological cancer. And many, the prognosis is still not great if you're diagnosed, because it's very hard to diagnose some of these cancers. And again, that comes down a lot to research. Research has not been done into these cancers, and so we don't have the diagnostics and the treatments yet. There are some successes in women's health, which I will go on to, but to stay on the problems, again, some of this is sort of what Rachel said. Endometriosis: 1 in 3 women have heavy menstrual bleeding. 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage, which again is something I think until you try to get pregnant, you don't know about, and that's something I think that needs a bit more awareness. And one of the things that Wellbeing of Women tries to do is also tackle the taboos and stigma around women's health. And miscarriage is one of those things that isn't spoken about enough, I think, and women are suffering on their own. And actually, unfortunately, there's a lot of us who have been through that, and we could share our stories and our experiences. With the research, it's chronically underfunded, as I've said before, and then specifically with women's health in the workplace, there's a lack of understanding and training, I think, and knowledge. So I'm just going to skip ahead because I've got a slide here about about women's health in the workplace that actually fits better now as we're talking about the kind of need. So, Rachel said that when she was going through, her journey, a lot of the time you are at work and you're having to deal with these issues when you're at work with people that might not know, you're not comfortable talking to about. So Wellbeing of Women has really identified that we need to start talking about these issues in the workplace, and we need to start helping companies and employers to be able to help their staff. And it's fantastic that Fisher German had policies in place. A lot of organizations don't have any policies in place around things like fertility and miscarriage. So 65% of women are uncomfortable talking about health at work. 50% say their employers are not supported. We did a big campaign about menopause, and there's a lot of women who leave the workforce earlier than really they should be, when they're at their most sort of experienced and productive, because they feel that there is no provision for them to support them going through the menopause and the effects they might have of that. And to go back again, so just to say a little bit more about Wellbeing of Women, established 60 years ago, 1964, as Birthright, and it was established by a doctor who saw a woman die in childbirth and was sort of wondering why that was still happening. So it was very much focused on research. In the 80s, we had Princess Diana as a patron, which was amazing for the cause. She did a lot of active things. I've found some amazing photographs of her opening hospitals dedicated to premature birth and things like that. She was a very active patron. The name was changed in 2004 to Wellbeing of Women to reflect the fact that the research had gone from pregnancy and baby research into all aspects of women's health. And since then, we've been funding everything across the life course. In 2021, we had another sort of change, not in name, but in sort of remit of what we do. And we have included education and advocacy in our work. Reflecting on what I said before around the fact there's just not, these issues are just not spoken about enough. There's still stigma and taboo surrounding them. There isn't enough research, and we can only fund a small amount of that, and we need to advocate and lobby for more research to be done at a higher level and bigger amounts of money. So we launched in 2021 with our first awareness raising campaign around menopause in the workplace. We've gone on to launch a couple of other campaigns, including our latest, which is called Just a Period, which is around ensuring that no woman or girl is held back by their periods. So this is going to be a long-term campaign. We've just released some asks to government about having periods spoken about at GP appointments a lot more widely, and things like that. So these are some of our achievements. So there has been some successes in the research over the last 60 years. To go back to talking about gynecological cancers, most of you will know that cervical cancer now is actually becoming a rare cancer because of the HPV vaccine. So Wellbeing of Women funded the research that found the link between HPV and cervical cancer, and then that same researcher went on to develop the vaccine that has been rolled out in schools. And actually just recently in Scotland, they found that no one who received that vaccine, in 10 years, no one has gone on to develop cervical cancer, which is incredible. And Rachel said that prevention and cure is the best thing. So if we can find other amazing breakthroughs like that. Early research that we did, most of you who may have had a pregnancy would have taken folic acid. Again, research funded by us made it clear the benefits of that. And also ultrasound in pregnancy. Before our research, it wasn't it wasn't used so widely, and now obviously everyone has an ultrasound whilst when they're pregnant. We're currently doing some research around using laser technology in cervical and vulvar cancer, which is hopefully having some really successful outcomes. And also we are funding up in Edinburgh a very exciting study into repurposing a cancer drug that will be used to help women with endometriosis as a treatment for the pain of endometriosis. That's actually now in clinical trial, which is really exciting, and women are going through those trials, and hopefully we'll have some results and that will be on the market in the next few years. So the research, education, advocacy, I've sort of touched on. And the research in terms of where our money raised goes to, mostly it would be research, not least it's very expensive, but also it's very much needed, and we're still one of the few charities that are funding research in this area. We're trying to develop a lot of partnerships with other organisations that are funding in the area so that we're able to have more impact and to fund bigger and more successful studies. So to go back to women's health in the workplace, this is our ambassador, Baroness Karen Brady, just highlighting the importance of supporting women in the workplace with their health. And we've gone through these issues. I think companies are getting a lot better at it. You know, as I said, brilliant to hear that Fisher German has policies, a lot more. I think, you know, 5-10 years ago they had a maternity policy and that was it. Now companies are really realizing they need broader fertility policies, miscarriage policy, and also menopause policies as well. And to just sort of foster an atmosphere of sort of talking about these things with HR if they feel they can. So in 2023, the figure of organisations that had a mandate to support people through menopause transition reached 50%, which I think is brilliant, up from 10% in just a few years. And it is believed that this is going to rise. The conversation around menopause in the UK is huge now, and organisations are realising they're really going to have to do something to attract and maintain the best people. And it's, you know, it's expensive for companies to lose women at the top of their game early when they could have a lot more years of productivity in them. So the Menopause Workplace Pledge was our first campaign that we launched in October 2021. And we hadn't done any campaigns before, and in all honesty we didn't know where this was going to go, and our target was to sign up 100 organisations in the first 3 months. I think we got about 200 in the first week, and we're now on over 3,000, ranging from big companies, BBC, Tesco, to you know, really small kind of organisations. It's a very simple idea that organisations pledge to support women in the workplace, and then they're supported by a series of newsletters and webinars that give them ideas on how they can do that, where signpost for resources, and help them wherever they are in their journey to making themselves an organisation that supports women going through the menopause. So as a sort of follow-on add-on from that, the sort of we realised we had all these organisations that really were committed to doing something, and we wanted to see what we could do for them to take it to the next step. Some of the organisations that signed up, like Tesco, already had, you know, a lot of things in place for their employees going through the menopause, but some had never started on this journey at all. So the employer membership program is a subscription annual subscription for membership to a program. It has its own portal and platform, and they have access to a huge online resource hub with expert developed guidance. There's policy templates, best practice. There are very frequent webinars with top women's health experts, regular newsletter updates, and networking opportunities to share progress on their sort of journey and best practice and things like that. They also have access to the logo here that they can use on their website. So far, I think we've got about 20 founding members of the employer membership program, and there are different levels of membership depending on size of organisation. And again, we've got a real range of bigger organisations and smaller ones. And actually, a lot of the smaller ones are quite interested because they don't have the capacity in-house to do this. They don't have the big HR teams, and this is a sort of a good way of outsourcing it. Menopause Explored is we got some funding from the Department of Health and Social Care for a menopause project in the sort of Bedfordshire area. So we're working with small medium enterprises to do menopause training via virtual reality headsets. So we've developed a video that talks about menopause in the workplace, and companies, sort of HR people or senior stakeholders, come in from the companies and are taken through the training, and then they're able to go back and talk to their staff about what they could be doing in their organisation. So that was sort of very sort of workplace focused. If you have any questions about what we do, sort of research or anything like that, yeah, just let me know.
Thanks so much, Caroline. That was really useful. I know we've chatted a lot, but I just have some questions for you. In the organisations that you've been speaking to, what is the biggest barrier to people talking about these issues in the workplace?
Probably precedent. I just think it hasn't been done, and I think there is, I think generally in the workplace there was previously an atmosphere of you don't bring your personal life with you to work, and that's changed a lot over the last 20 years. And I think, as there are a lot more women in the workplace, and it's not, like it was 50 years ago, where the men are mostly working, the women are mostly at home looking after children. Men have caring responsibilities as well. They're wanting to, the work-life balance, they want to feel supported in everything. And I think with women's health, there are just a lot more issues that need to be addressed, and pregnancy is just one of them, which I think a lot of companies have done quite well at doing over the last 40 years. But then there are other things as well, and maternity policies only go so far as if you have a successful pregnancy, that you're pregnant for 9 months and then you're off for between 6 months and a year. But what happens if the baby comes early, or what happens if the baby doesn't come, or what happens if you can't get pregnant? And a lot of policies don't reflect all these different outcomes that are actually heartbreakingly common. And I think, again, there's been a little bit more about people being more willing to speak about their own personal things to colleagues, but then to HR, there's that worry about what will this look like if, I remember not wanting to tell my boss that I'd had a miscarriage, because then he would know that I was trying to get pregnant. And I sort of had to ask myself, well, why do I not want him to know that I'm trying to get pregnant? And it's sort of this thing that we have to hide, because we feel it. I think there has been this feeling at work that we have to be all in at work, and we're only focused on work, and we don't have a life outside. But I think that is changing a lot, and people are being able to talk about what's happening to them a lot more. And so hopefully, if we divulge that we're trying to get pregnant, people won't take that as like, oh, well, they're only going to be here for a few more months and, they're no use to us, kind of thing. I think that is changing, and organizations are realizing that if you find somebody good, it's worth keeping them on. And if that means supporting them through things like pregnancies, or allowing them to go to appointments they need to go to through fertility treatments, or the space to breastfeed when they come back, that actually you're going to keep those people on in the long term, it's better value than trying to find somebody else and recruit somebody else.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it is, I mean, I am that person, I didn't feel I could talk about IVF at work or endometriosis, and I think when you're going through something, it's really hard to be open and honest about it. Sometimes it's much easier now that it happened 6, 7, 8 years ago. I feel I can talk about it, and I know one of my coping strategies was work was a place where people didn't know, and I think that's okay too. But I think once you've been through something, if you're happy to share it, sharing it's really powerful. And I found it really nerve-wracking when I started sharing a little bit about what I had been through. But by sharing it, you make it more acceptable for people to talk about it. And it's amazing, as soon as you share a tiny bit of information, how many people come back and go, oh, well, yeah, we had a miscarriage, or we had problems conceiving. And just by people sharing that experience, it makes it, people more comfortable to talk about it in the workplace. Because you're so right, work, life happens whether you're at work or not at work. And if you can just be open with the people around you and raise their awareness. But I think it's also quite hard for people that haven't been through it. I mean, my preconceptions of what IVF would be like before I went through it, I literally thought you went through the process and you get pregnant at the end. I honestly was that it came as a massive shock to me that, you know, probably, you know, I think it's 3 or 4 rounds people normally take to get pregnant. Some people get it on the first go, and that's fantastic, but that's not necessarily a realistic expectation, and you have no idea what you're going to need and when you're going to need it. I think that's something that's really hard to manage from a work perspective, because you get phone calls from, you know, we did a when I went through an egg collection process, you know, you go in one day and they say, right, you need to come back tomorrow, or you need to come back, you know, in 2 days time, but you don't know until you're there that day when you next need to go back. So from a work perspective, it's actually a really complicated process to manage, because you have no idea what you're going to need and when you're going to need it. But that's a bit like a lot of the challenges we face as females, you know, with periods. You know, some months it can be okay, and other months it's really awful, and actually you can't get off the bathroom floor. Menopause, you know, some nights you can sleep perfectly soundly, and another night you're having hot sweats and can't, you know, have literally no energy the next day. So you just don't know what you're going to be faced with and when you're going to need the support. So hopefully by raising the profile of it, and the work that you're doing as well, means that people feel a little bit more comfortable, because I've found that everybody I have shared it with has been unbelievably supportive.
Yeah, and I think you don't want it to be this sort of big secret, and that's not to say that you go and tell everyone, but you know, with the menopause workplace pledge and the employer membership program, the idea is that there are people then in the organization who, you know, especially in the HR team, who are sensitive to these subjects. So if you do know that you've got treatment coming up, fertility treatment coming up, you can say, okay, over these next 4 months, my working patterns might need to be a bit different, or it might need to be, you know, I might need to take days off unexpectedly and things like that. It's just having that conversation of honesty, where I think that also helps with ease the resentment between employee and employer. If, you know, if the employer doesn't know why you're taking all these weird days off, it's harder for them to actually understand. So we've kind of got to be a bit open to allow them to understand it, and to you know, adapt to it and have that level of flexibility.
Yeah, it's difficult though, being brave at that point, when
It is,
you know, you're using all your brave energy to tackle the thing you're tackling.
It really is, and I think that's why the sort of awareness raising and helping organisations, or key people within organisations, sort of become the person that has that level of understanding, that you know that they're not going to just say, well, don't be ridiculous, you know, you can come back to work, that you know that the response is going to be at least understanding. You know, obviously they've got, you know, limits within what they can do and allow, but at least you have an understanding response in that first instance. So trying to build up that kind of awareness and understanding within the HR teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just with our senior leaders as well, making sure that they understand the impact and what it can feel like, because we all have to, you know, we all interact with people that are affected by this, and it might not be directly that person. It might be their daughter going through IVF, or, you know, their son and their partner going through you know, really difficult child related or conceiving issues, and so it's that ripple effect. I think it doesn't just affect the person going through it, it goes out further than that, and it's how we can make sure that as responsible employers we can support those individuals through you know, these really challenging times of life.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, I don't think we've got any other questions. I'll just quickly check. But thank you so much for sharing your time and your thoughts with us. It's very much appreciated.
Well, thank you for having me.
And
brilliant. If anybody does want to find out any more, our website, www.wellbeingofwomen.uk, and we have lots of resources on there. We also have a health education hub, where we have pages on a lot of the issues that women may be affected by, pregnancy and birth things, through to periods and gynecological cancers as well. We've recently just really built out our period health hub with lots of resources there, and signposting to great places to go, and we've got lots of exciting things coming with the education side of things, so keep an eye, and you can sign up on our website to our newsletters as well, and we send out research updates and updates on some of the education stuff we're doing, and links to our health hub, and also how you can get involved.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Caroline. Really appreciate your time. Thanks, Zara. I think that will close the webinar there. Thank you.